One early autumn morning, Mr. Walter sat on his old wooden chair on the front porch. He held a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. Soft sunlight filtered through. The leaves above the roof. Everything was still. No phone calls. No messages. No one inviting him out like they used to. And yet he did not feel sad. There was a time when Walter's calendar was always full. Friends called him to go out, to meet up to attend reunions, with old groups and new ones. Every week brought dozens of calls. Nearly every day someone dropped by or made plans with him. But slowly, those gatherings started to feel exhausting. Conversations where no one truly listened. Stories told again and again. Laughter that felt polite but hollow. And after each visit, he came home with a quiet sense of emptiness. One day, Mr. Walter stopped trying. He did not push anyone away. He did not feel angry. He simply stopped being the one to reach out. And surprisingly, when he stopped holding on, no one held on to him. Many people after 70 will face this moment. The moment when social circles begin to fade. The moment when silence is no longer frightening, but comforting. You might have thought that aging means being lonely, but if you look closely, you may see the truth. Some relationships leave us lonelier. The harder, we try to keep them. After 70, having fewer friends does not mean failure. It might mean freedom. In this story, Light of Wise Elder will share the journeys of three people, Mr. Walter, Miss Ellen, and Mr. George. Each of them once lived in the middle of noisy social lives, but they chose a different path, not isolation, not coldness, just peace, quiet, gentle peace. And perhaps through them, you will discover something simple. The fewer the friends, the closer we come to ourselves. Part 1. When there is nothing left to prove, you finally live for yourself. For over 40 years, Mr. Walter was the kind of man everyone in town knew by name. As the chief engineer at the region's largest factory, he was invited to nearly every community event. He gave speeches at the opening of the local library. His name was always on the list for class reunions, alumni gatherings, and company board meetings. For a long time, he believed, those things made his life complete. He thought being present at all. Those events meant he still mattered. But when he retired at 70, everything changed. There were no more work emails, no more meeting schedules. No one needed him to say a few words at the microphone anymore. Friends who once claimed to be close slowly faded away. It was as if the bond between them had only ever existed in the workplace. At first, Walter felt empty, and like many in his situation, he tried to hold on. He made phone calls, invited people out for coffee, brought up old memories, sent photos from the past. But he began to see it clearly. Everything felt forced. The smiles were no longer real. The questions felt hollow. Some people avoided him. Some responded politely, but without warmth. Others simply never replied. One quiet evening, sitting alone in his living room, Walter asked himself a question. What exactly am I trying to prove? He had spent his life earning the approval of others, to be seen as capable, respectable, valuable. But now he had no title to show, no stage to speak on, and no applause to wait for. The next day he bought an old guitar. It was something he had once dreamed of, learning in his youth, but always put aside because he was too busy. He began practicing, one note at a time, slowly. Mistakes were fine. He took evening walks by himself, read the books he had never finished, listened to old records in his cabinet. Sometimes he wrote in a journal, not to post online, not for anyone to praise, just to understand what was in his own heart. He did not hate his old friends, but he understood something. If a relationship only survives because you are the one keeping it alive, maybe it has already passed. Since letting go of the need to maintain appearances, Walter felt lighter. No more draining conversations. No more worrying about being forgotten. He realized his value was never in how many people remembered his name. It was in whether he still lived in a way that felt true to himself. And the beautiful part is this. The moment he no longer needed anyone's approval, he finally felt free. Part 2. Peace does not come from crowds, but from listening to yourself. At 74, Miss Ellen was the kind of woman everyone called cheerful. sociable and full of life. For most of her life, she had been at the center of every conversation. From college friends to retirement groups, her social calendar was always full. Morning coffee with old friends, afternoon phone calls to check in on others, evening market strolls with neighbors, book club meetings online at night. She never allowed herself to be idle, but strangely she began to feel tired. The gatherings became habits rather than joys. Conversations repeated themselves. Someone would complain about their grandkids. Someone else would gossip about neighbors. And many were just waiting for their turn to speak, not to listen. One day after a lively afternoon get-together, Ellen came home and felt an emptiness she could not explain. The next morning, a familiar text arrived inviting her to tea. Ellen stared at the phone for a long time. Then she set it down. She did not reply. She did not go. She gave no explanation. She just sat still. From that day on, she stopped attending every meeting. At first, her friends were surprised. Then they stopped asking. Ellen never tried to explain. Instead, she began to walk alone. She tended the flower garden behind her house. She pulled out old books to read again. She listened to classical music every evening. At first, she was afraid people would think she had become distant or closed off. But no one truly called to ask how she was doing. And in that silence, she discovered something. The quiet was not an ending. It was a beginning. Ellen did not hold a grudge. She simply did not want to spend the rest of her life forcing laughter. She did not want to contribute to conversations. When she had nothing left to say, she no longer wanted to keep appointments. Just because they had become routine, she longed to live her days with meaning. And sometimes meaning was just breathing slowly, listening to birds in the garden, making orange marmalade from her mother's 1963 recipe. She no longer needed many people around to feel loved. Just a few who truly understood her, a sunny corner in her garden, and a heart open enough to forgive herself for all the years she tried too hard to be liked. Today, Ellen is still joyful, but it is not the kind of joy that comes with loud laughter or crowded rooms. It is a quiet joy, a silent peace, the kind of peace that does not ask for approval, the kind of peace that only appears when you stop rushing to live for someone else. Part 3. When you give too much. Sometimes you forget to keep something for yourself. Mr. George is 82 this year. For decades, he was the one who kept every relationship alive, from college friends to former coworkers, to his Sunday morning chess group. He was always the one to call first. He wrote cards. He made plans. He checked in. During holidays, he would carefully prepare gifts for each of his close friends. When someone got sick, he showed up with hot soup and cheerful stories. Someone once said, "George is the glue that holds everyone together," and he felt proud of that. But as time went on, something heavy settled in his heart. He realized people mostly reached out when they needed something. One time he was in the hospital for a few days after a mild dizzy spell. He did not tell anyone. He just wanted to see if someone would check in on him. No one did. No one called. No one visited. When he got home, he tried reaching out. Some replied with brief messages. Some said they were busy. Some had changed their numbers. On his 80th birthday, he sent invitations to over 10 old friends. Only 2 came. One said they had already promised. The other had to leave early. The party ended sooner than he expected. The cake remained untouched. The chairs still full. Only George and a lingering emptiness stayed behind. That night, George did not cry. He simply sat still, staring at the living room light, and asked himself, was I ever truly important to them, or just convenient? After that day, he stopped initiating. He stopped updating birthday lists. He stopped suggesting weekend gatherings. He stepped down as the group organizer, and he gave that time back to himself. He started painting. Simple pictures full of color, not to display, but to enjoy. He wrote letters, sometimes to distant relatives, sometimes just to himself. He listened to instrumental music. He reread old books, and tried cooking meals. He had always been too afraid to try. Strangely, when he stopped chasing one-sided relationships, he did not feel lonely. He felt lighter, no more disappointment when messages went unanswered, no more sadness when people no longer showed up as they used to. Then new connections slowly appeared. Not loud, not constant, but real. A neighbor invited him to plant vegetables together. A granddaughter called every Sunday night, just to talk about her cat. A boy down the street asked him to teach him how to paint. Mr. George realized something he had never dared to believe. You do not need a crowd to feel worthy, just a few who truly care, and a heart that knows how to care for itself. That is enough. Part 4. The less you expect from others, the more room you have for your own peace. Dear friend, after Walter, Ellen, and George stepped away from the old social circles, they did not become isolated people. They did not close themselves off. They simply let go of expectations from others, and in doing so, they came home to themselves, back to the small things that truly nourished their hearts. Walter used to think that being forgotten meant he was no longer important, but he discovered something deeper. What hurt was not their absence, but the quiet hope he still carried, that they would remember. When he let go of that expectation, he also let go of the pain. Ellen used to believe that showing up for every conversation was how you kept friendships alive. But over time, she realized no one was counting how often she came, and no one was really listening. It all felt like an old rhythm everyone knew, but no longer found meaning in. When she stopped waiting for others to care, she started caring for herself, something she had not done in decades. And George, the one who always gave, always connected, always reached out, finally understood. Kindness also needs the right place to land. If you keep pouring into a cracked glass, you are the only one who runs dry. When he stopped hoping others would remember him the way they once did, he began to remember himself, more gently, more completely than ever before. That is where their journeys met, in a quiet awakening. That growing older does not have to mean chasing those who drift away. It can be a pause, a chance to hold on to what truly matters. Their time, their energy, their peace. They no longer searched for joy in the number of birthday calls, or how often they were invited out, or how many texts came each week. They found it instead in the way sunlight warmed the porch each morning, in the bird song that echoed through the garden. In a simple meal they actually wanted to cook. They learned that happiness does not live in the number of connections. It lives in the quality of each lived moment. And when they no longer needed to be noticed, they began to be seen, naturally, gently, without effort. Some new people showed up. Others did not. And sometimes they were full, enough not to need anyone to show up at all. Part 5. Friendship with yourself. The deepest bond we often forget. One afternoon, Walter sat on his porch with a wooden guitar resting on his lap. He did not play well. His fingers were slower now. Sometimes he missed a note, but every time he strummed a simple chord, something stirred inside him, gently, like wind brushing through the trees. No one praised him, no one judged, but he felt full. On similar afternoons, Ellen would prepare a small tray of cookies just for herself, not for guests, not to share, just an old recipe from her mother. Butter cookies baked just right, served with Earl Grey tea. She laid them on the table, played a classical record and savored each bite, as if she were at a quiet little party, and the only guest was herself. As for George, ever since he stopped waiting for people to call, he started calling himself out to the garden. He drew simple pictures for the neighborhood kids. A dog, a tree, a little house. The drawings were not perfect, but the kids loved them. They laughed with joy every time they got one. And George, he laughed quietly in his heart. These moments were not flashy. No one was watching. Nothing was posted online. No likes. But they were the deepest moments they had ever known. Because for the first time, they did not need anyone else to feel alive. Loneliness often creeps in when we do not know how to be alone. But peace arrives when we learn to become our own best friend. Not everyone learns this early. We are taught to socialize, to open up, to have friends in order to be happy. But rarely are we taught how to sit quietly, without feeling empty, how to sip tea alone and still smile. How to walk alone without feeling lost. Walter, Ellen, George, none of them feared silence anymore, because now they had formed the most lasting and honest relationship of all, a friendship with themselves. And the funny thing is, once they stopped searching for others to fill the silence, true connections started to appear on their own. Not many, just enough. The kind of people who can sit beside you for hours, say nothing, and still make you feel completely understood. Part 6. Having few friends is not loneliness. It is the quiet wisdom of a seasoned soul. The stories of Walter, Ellen, and George are not about people who withdrew from the world. They still live among others. With neighbors, with their communities, with family. But the difference is this. They no longer let their happiness depend on the names in their phone, or how often they get invited out. After turning 70, they stopped measuring their lives by the number of holiday greetings they received, or how many gatherings they were asked to join. They no longer felt sad when a call went unanswered. They no longer waited for someone to check in, because they understood something deeper. Not every absence is a loss, and not every silence is a sign of loneliness. They have entered a new chapter, where every choice is made not out of habit, but out of sincerity, where time is more precious than small talk, where the stillness of a quiet afternoon outweighs the noise of a crowded room. You see, there are things we only come to understand with age, that we do not need many friends. We need the right ones, that letting go of one strained connection can open up a space for ourselves to breathe, that we can live deeply and fully even when we are alone. And most importantly, they know, and so do you, that we all deserve to live this stage of life in peace. No more trying to please others. No more chasing tired circles of social obligation. So if you are in that age now, if you feel your circle of friends growing smaller, try to see it not as an ending, but as life's gentle way of helping you choose what truly matters. Let yourself be lighter, more at ease, and do not forget, your most trustworthy friend is still with you. It is the you of today, steady, mature, and whole. If you see yourself in this story, Light of Wise Elders would love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a message, like sending a note to your future self. And if you wish to hear more heartfelt and quiet stories like this, please subscribe to Light of Wise Elders. We will always be here, like a silent friend, but never absent,